All right, we are live and good to go. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. We've had some minor technical difficulties on both sides tonight, but we are here and we are so excited to be with you.
Yes.
Robin will be back with me in the future, but tonight I have my beloved and fabulous friend, Leigh Wald, here with me tonight. And we are so excited to talk to you about really embracing your divinity and what is it that's standing in your way? What are those subconscious, programs running in the background that is keeping you from truly embracing and loving you? And, the trickle down effect, whether it's with your partner, coworkers and your family. So Leah, I'd really like to welcome you and let's dive in.
Well, thanks for having me, Kels. It's really, really awesome to be here with you, as usual. It's quite the journey because we know that this is a self-love journey. And so a lot of this comes down to how much we're trusting and loving ourselves through that observational awareness on the spiritual journey. When we aren't basically living an aligned life, we can get pulled any which way as far as your ego wants to pull you, really. And so that keeps you further and further from your truth, which effectively will bring you into that state where you just, we're not fully accepting ourselves, the power that we actually hold. As you know, Kelsey, we can't escape the human condition, can we?
No. We've all spent many, many years trying in our own ways, and we're all finding our way back home. We're finding our way back to ourselves and really trusting that inner voice. What really kind of sparked this show tonight was the group of women that you host on Your Arriving Home. And, we were all sharing, and as we do, and, it kind of struck both of us that we're all able to see the amazing qualities amongst the others. It's very easy for us to show the love and, see the amazing progress and everything else. But then when we turn that mirror to ourselves, it's, why can't we do that for ourselves? We've both struggled with that at times. The other ladies who are absolutely fabulous have as well. And I think it's a really common thing, whether you're a parent or not, just yourself on your journey, it's a really integral piece of it, that being able to physically look yourself in the mirror. I loved how, you talked about the affirmations that you used to do and how difficult that was. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit, how hard that was to actually take a look at yourself and say, yeah, you're pretty kick-ass. I love you,
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I'm so inspired by those women in that group call that we do once a week. It's incredible what they're acknowledging. And honestly, is my connection okay? It's all good.
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay. Sorry, just a little nervous.
Nope, you're perfect.
But what they're acknowledging and what they're looking at, as far as, everybody's journey is individual. We know this, but we can all relate to how hard some of this stuff is, right? The layers upon layers. And as we seek spirit into the physical body, we actually, there's that acceptance of the body. That really truly calls us, as I like to say, home, likes to call us home into the heart. But how do we accept this human? A lot of us start the spiritual journey, and it's kind of this idea of, oh, I'm spiritual, I'm a light worker, and you can kind of get into the spiritual journey on a really masculine level, and what we're doing now is balancing the feminine. So the body starts to call out, right, for and there's a voice that physical holds. So whether it be through pain or disease or however that looks for you, we also, beyond those, things, it's how do we accept everything that we are and have always been? How do we accept the abuse we, essentially did to ourselves unknowingly, unconsciously? How do we accept, what the trials we put the choices we made? This is a tough one because, as we know on the spiritual journey, it's that acknowledgement of everything that you've ever done. It's not about fixing and healing everything. It's about acknowledging it all. And understanding that everything happened perfectly for you to be where you are today, not just this lifetime, everything that's brought you to this point. So the affirmations that I started with, I would do those mirror affirmations, and for a long time, right? You'd say the thing, whatever, you're beautiful, I accept, all of these things. But there, for a long time for me, it was about a month of straight affirmations that there was always this like ego, like little voice in the background, right? The ego saying, well, most of the time. So as soon as I would affirm something, that I'm, working positively on myself and acceptance and sending and self-love, there's this little voice that, on my good days or whatever. And then after a while, what started to happen was it was just the truth, right? There just was not that little voice in the background. Now, whether we all have our bad days and good days. So regardless of where you get to with those affirmations, we're going to still, as Kelsey, as the layers come out, there's always something called for our attention and our acknowledgement. So that's a tool you can use, but ultimately we need to feel, right? We need to really acknowledge where that underlying the trauma is seated, or the root of what's actually being asked to be acknowledged, because we rejected so much of ourselves, again, unconsciously, not knowing that there was another way, right? So it is just full acceptance on every level, right?
Yeah. Which is, that is the journey. We may sound cavalier about it, but it is raw, it is exacting, it is emotional, it is physical, it's all encompassing. And we talk about this a lot. It's all there really is. And the deeper that we can kind of dig, and the more layers that we can peel back, it becomes pretty evident we're not driving the boat. There's so many subconscious programs. We're basically supercomputers, right? There's so many sub programs that are dictating our behavior, our habits, our thoughts, our ideas, and most importantly, for the purposes of this conversation, our self-talk and our self-thought. The divine feminine is, I think we can all agree, she is awake, she is feeling, and she has a voice right now, and she is not happy. She has been subverted and subjugated for a very long time, and she is roaring big time. And that energy is fierce. It is raw creation. It is, and out of creation, it's cyclical. It's creation, destruction. In order to create something that must be destroyed. So it's a very powerful energy. And when you don't, and we're all guilty of this, we all do it. We're all learning how to. That's kind of the deal right now, but when we're not aware and we're using it subconsciously against ourselves, it's horrifying. It's very painful. We've been talking about this a lot in our groups and our private calls and everything. We are our own worst enemies, and the depth and breadth of meaning of that is so much more
Yeah.
so much more than just that simple phrase. I mean, we're talking childhood things, we're talking past life things, and even simple, I never wear white, right? Something
Yeah.
as stupid as something like that. Well, I was an overweight child, I had a story, I don't wear white. And in my mind, that I've turned that feminine energy of you're a beautiful being into, oh, you don't want to do that. That's, are you sure you want to do that? We've given the ego control over that feminine energy.
Yeah.
And we use it against ourselves in a million different ways a day, and it eats at us and
Yeah.
it infiltrates how we speak about ourselves. But also, for those of us that are around children or around parents, it really affects what they hear and what they internalize. My kids are young, your kids are a bit older. And I had to really stop and think about how I was speaking to them about some things. I've got the twins that are a bit bigger and a bit older than their sister. And, it was always, you're too big to do that. You're going to hurt her. You're bigger than her. And it's,
Yeah.
that's those are things that were said to me, and when I stopped to think about it, now it's, well, Maeve's a lot smaller than you, and there's a totally different
Connotation. Yeah.
exactly, and I'm hypersensitive to that because that was my story,
Yeah.
but it's there's a million examples.
Yeah.
you know
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, and it's so true because as we know, when we become that like really good at objectively um observing ourselves, we observe all of the connections, all of the relationships involved, and it's so true. It just affects everything. um and when you get good at it, you can actually catch yourself in these moments and actually like kind of heal the moment, right? um but it's such a good tool to not only use, especially with your kids, but when they see you um, catching yourself like that, they start to implement that stuff. I had Soleil ask me or talk to me last week, and she was like, I caught my ego trying to make me feel a certain way. And I was like, we had this whole conversation about it. And it was really interesting because here's my 10-year-old saying like, it was trying to make me think this, and I know it's not true. Right. Um, and it's only, obviously she's picking up on a lot of stuff that we speak about and that kind of thing, but just, really how we live and how the choices that we're making. Um, but there's this pressure, right, among especially mothers, I would say, parents, right now, especially with what's been going down in the external and the world. Everybody believes that they're right. Everybody believes that they have it a better way figured out, or that their way's okay, and they're justifying it in whatever way they need to. And I know that everybody has their reasons, and it's not to judge anyone, but understanding that if you're not happy with your situation, it's no external to blame, right? So whatever is going on for you, kids or no kids, there really truly is nobody to blame. Spouse, ex-boyfriend, like there's nobody to blame but you. So, and not that we need to play the blame game, but just understanding that that's you acknowledging and taking full responsibility for everything. And that's basically saying to the ego to say, take a back seat for a bit, and I've got the reins. Because essentially we can't keep running our lives by everybody else's egos, their decisions, what everybody else views and their perceptions of how it's going to go and how it should be. And if you don't trust yourself, you're going to start to do that, right? But what you do essentially by trusting yourself and knowing, being able to say that I do this because of this, and I trust myself, it doesn't have to be right to anybody but you. And when you are in that state, there's no, you are aligned. right? Because you're taking full responsibility for anything that could then happen. So essentially you release everybody else of that burden of having to carry this idea that everybody else should be there creating success for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you create it for yourself. And when that's powerful, that's a powerful
Mm.
place to be, because you're owning all of it. You're owning your mistakes, you're owning, everything, but your successes are yours because you believed in you, and every relationship will benefit from that. Every relationship that you have, regardless of it being a positive or negative, those are just labels. They are literally just events in your life, you know?
Well, and that's really where it starts. So many folks that I've met that you all work with, that we just know in our lives, it's my husband and wife are always at each other's throat, or I can't get my kids to respect me or listen or what have you, or I've got this boss that it's always butting heads, right? But it's a very rare individual who takes a time out for themselves and says, is it really all of them,
Mm-hmm.
or is it me? And that's where it starts. It's the only thing that we have control of. Absolutely, the only thing we have control of is ourselves. And in order to be able to have, a perception of control over, these other relationships in our life, because we don't really control them. We only control, how we react, how we respond, right? What we
Yeah.
allow for an emotional response. That's setting our 2 feet on a different path. That's the beginning of the journey of, okay, it's me and I
Yeah.
need to own it, because there's no hope of living that aligned, fulfilling, sovereign life
Mm-hmm.
if you can't love yourself, and if you can't look at yourself and see the role that you played in the perceived bad things that have happened to you, right? And I think that's the hardest thing for people to do. And I do feel like it's a very feminine thing, because it's the emotions, right? We hold it all,
Yeah.
but the external wants us to blame it on someone else. So you've got this clash of the masculine and feminine energy, right? And
Yeah.
the emotions overwhelm, they take over, and then you feel like you're on a sinking ship. And the only way to kind of combat that and be able to swim and navigate that is to take hold of yourself.
Yeah.
And really, you have to find a way to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and start to, even if it's not love right away, a lot of us, it's all right, I guess I can say I like myself, right?
Yeah.
But that's that secret key. That's the first ignition, is to be able to say, you know what, I don't like myself, and
Yeah.
I sure as hell don't love
Why?
myself.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I think what you're speaking to, Kels, like, I love that you brought up control, because
Mm.
it's through this, like, we feel this loss of control, I think,
Yeah.
loss of being able to whatever, A, B, C, D, E, like fill in the blank. And then what we tend to do is actually like, okay, well then you start to control, right? Then we start to like exude our control and our power on all these externals, thinking, but it's not that, right? This is all wasted energy trying to control everybody else around you. And how respectful is that? Like, we all, we
Mm.
all want to be seen and understood, as we are with our own truth, but we've lost that mutual respect, that we can actually, disagree. We can actually have these conversations and disagree and still, have respect for each other. But we're trying to control everybody out of this seemingly loss of control, or, wherever it's coming from, that insecurity. So we're not grounding it through and understanding why we feel that way. We're just, pointing the finger and putting
Mhm.
and directing it outward. And as long as you're doing that, you're wrecking the relationships around you, whether they be your boss, your parents, your kids, your spouse, and they don't need to change. It's only our expectation of them that is being fueled, right? And we really have to look at A, what we're expecting of ourselves, and then B, what we're expecting of those around us. There is one truth, and the one truth is that everything is energy. Then we really have to take responsibility for what we're doing with ours, how we're directing it. Are we grounding it through? And like you said, our emotions play a big part of that, especially for women. We really feel it differently than men do. Like Robin, he's a very, very balanced guy, but he still, we will react completely differently in each situation. There's a reason for that. And our emotions sometimes really make us feel like we're out of control because like you said, you can be swimming in your emotions and feel like you have no ground. But where exactly are you directing those emotions, and does the external deserve it? And essentially, I always say, put yourself first, love yourself. Well, loving yourself is actually saying, I'm willing to stop and have no schedule, no idea of what I could be doing right now, not distracting myself, and actually feeling into what is going on for me right now. If I don't have answers to my big questions, why do I feel this way? Yeah. And can I allow myself to feel it through? Right. But many of us will just go, well, I'll sign up for a class. Oh, I'll do this. We have all these ideas from the masculine that's like, and essentially, masks it up for a bit. It's a cover up. We don't deal with it. And like we said in the beginning, there's no time now. Like the time is now as far as the physical goes. If you're not feeling it physically in your body right now, have you gone as deep as you think you have? Essentially, because I know that I've been healing for years. Yeah. And I can't believe the pain I'm feeling in my body, because it's at that point. I can't ignore it.
No, absolutely. And I really like that you brought up what we're doing with our energy and how we use that and with our emotions. You think, and we learn this behavior as children, right? To distract ourselves. Most of us, we'd have a tantrum. What would happen to us? They'd bribe us to shush. We'd be given a sweet or a toy. We'd be sent to our room. Well, if you can just control yourself, I'll put your show on, right? We've been conditioned. We've been programmed. It doesn't make you a bad person or lacking or any of that. There's a billion stories about all of that too, right? It's happened to all of us. We have all had some form of conditioning in which we were told our emotions are invalid. Nobody wants to see them. You are not to express them. So it's like a champagne cork. So it's stuffed in there tight, and people keep shaking the bottle and they keep shaking the bottle. And at some point that bottle's going to burst, and look out for anyone who's around you. We see it with children all the time. Yeah. We never, at our core, we never progressed past that because we didn't have anyone tell us, you know what, it's okay that you're going to sit at home alone on Saturday night and cry for 3 hours because you are feeling sad and you don't know why. That's okay. But in today's society, nope, you should be at the club. You should be doing this, should be family movie night, whatever it is. We've had things done to us. We've had the conditioning imposed upon us. Society says what it says. It is what it is, essentially. We have two choices. We can sit here and blame it and continue to distract ourselves, like you said, with the yoga and the nights out and the girls' weekends away or whatever the heck it is, or We can go, you know what? I do have all these emotions and they're eating me alive from the inside out and I hurt. And I don't understand why, but I don't want to hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we start to question, as you spoke to, then it's okay. Maybe I do need to reach out to someone who can maybe help me observe those bigger questions so I can answer them for myself. I think that's an important aspect too. Everything we need to know, we have. We may not be able to access it. Those files might be locked, but they're in there.
Yeah.
I've worked with many different people. I've worked with you personally. I've worked with Robin personally. It's not your job to give me the answers, right? It's not, I can pose questions to you and you can give me your opinion. But at the end of the day, I'm the one coming to my truths. I'm the one coming to the conclusions. And I can feel it when it happens, Sometimes it's super painful. Sometimes it's just, it feels freeing. It feels elating.
Yeah.
But I'm not, and nobody should be going out to the external looking for their answers or for their justifications either. Well, my parents sucked. They didn't know what they were doing and they programmed me and they conditioned me. Okay, that's great. You're a grown-up now. Are you going to let them control your fate and the rest of your life? Are you going to let them live in your head and be miserable? Or are you going to take back control of the sovereign being that you are?
Yeah.
And start looking for those answers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. It is absolutely so true, because if we don't look at these things, they continue to run in the background, and we continue to essentially just make these decisions out of ego all the way through our life, not even really realizing that you're doing so. Even on the spiritual journey, you can continue to. Because not too many people that I know have integrated ego, it's every human on this planet is running around with their egos totally running the show. Why? Because we set it up like that. And it's perfect. It is actually perfectly designed, right? But we do have to understand that all of these areas of codependency that we've really attached to, as far as every relationship we've got going on, you can still blame the indoctrination, you can still blame all of these ideas that we come across in the spiritual journey. There's all these systems of control and there's all of this, and I can still actually just blame them and then continue on my ego journey. But that's not getting to the root of your trauma and the root of what's causing you disease and why you are unhappy. So we do have to look at all areas of codependency, let alone all of our relationships, all of, everything that we take part in, our closest ones, the ones that are, loving, caring relationships, what role are our kids playing? What are we expecting of them to fulfill for us? Are they a success for us in some way? If they do A, B, C, and D, do they make me look good in certain light? We have to call ourselves out on everything we are expecting of those externals of those people, because it's not fair for anyone.
No.
And ourselves, because we shouldn't be held accountable like that from anybody else either. But it's, we have to start calling it out and understanding it for what it is. The hardest one that I looked at was my kids and Robin. It was easier to kind of look at some other ones that were maybe more negatively influenced. Still taught me a lesson. I'm not blaming or anything like that, but the growth was amazing through all of those experiences. However, the loving ones, the ones that are there because we chose them, we're choosing to have them every day in our life. Like, we have to look at what we're still expecting, because it's a union because it's this, and making sure that we're not quick to label and put it yet in another box.
Oh, absolutely.
There just are so many boxes that we have to look at because our ego hides everywhere. Our ego likes to be very, very sneaky. And that essentially is why we're bringing our consciousness from the mind into the physical, right? Because if you're not really feeling into that intuitively from your gut center, again, you can have the mind ruling, and we know where that leads, right?
Yeah, that's your pain and suffering, folks. That's the endless torturous loop that you allow yourself to be on. And it's very hard to disconnect because it means, again, that accountability piece, that responsibility piece. I think one of the hardest things that I had to look at, my all three of my kids have suffered from a vaccine injury, and I carried immense guilt from the decision I made to allow that to occur. And I had spent, the first 3.5 years of their lives literally throwing myself against a brick wall. Everything I did, I ate, slept, breathed, was to fix my mistake.
Yeah.
And it was this awful cycle because I felt guilty about what was going on. I caused what was going on. And then they would exhibit these behaviors that would throw it right back in my face. And was it them upsetting me and making me hurt because of what they were doing or incapable of doing? No, it was because it made me feel guilty. It made me feel inadequate. But
and then you're essentially right.
Yep.
You're essentially bringing more and more of it in. Yeah, exactly.
And it really started to reach a pinnacle, and it was the worst time in my life. One of probably the top 3 worst times in my life. But I was able to finally admit, yeah, I unintentionally caused them physical, emotional, and spiritual harm. But you know what? They're my children and I love them, and it's not their fault. And it's not my fault. I was operating from a place of fear, and I can admit that now. And I don't hate myself for it.
That's
and
huge.
that was the secret answer, right? I had to come to it. There was a good 3-hour session of bawling like a child, when that happened. And I'm not ashamed of that either, But it was very freeing, and it completely changed my entire perspective. It began to change, and it's continued to evolve and change how I approach my husband. There's a lot of resentment there that's not there anymore. It was the blame game, and because we couldn't fix them, that's not there anymore. How I approach their different needs and their quirks and everything, it's very different now. Our house, it will always be chaotic. They're all under 5, but that it's a lot emotionally, it's calmer. The energy is more balanced, and they're thriving in large part due to that. There's other things that go on here.
Whoa. Just repeat that one more time for the microphone.
They are thriving. They are amazing, successful little beings, and they are intelligent within their own right, and they're sponges, right? They are learning from my husband and I, from the calls that I have, from the beautiful people in our lives. They hear and see everything. And the day that Killian was able to vocalize, yes, I'm mad at my brother, but I don't want to hit him because then he'll feel sad the way I do. He's 4. If that 4-year-old Kelsey would have walked up to her sibling and knocked her block off, that's, but he's 4, and he's he's starting to see that, no, I can still hurt and not project it back out, that I can sit with my feelings and be hurt, and I don't have to lash out. And that's what we're learning as adults. And that's what that divine feminine energy is calling for, is, we don't have the luxury of ignoring our emotions anymore. That cork is out, and we can either allow it to wash us away in a flood, or we can try and understand. And, we have some explaining to do to ourselves. We have some apologizing to do to ourselves, because we are our harshest judges. We've all had people that have treated us poorly and acted out towards us in ways that were unkind. But at the end of the day, that voice in our head, that's the worst voice.
Yeah.
It convinces us of and says the most cutting things.
Yeah.
And the most long-lasting things. And that's the one that we need to work on the relationship with. That's the one that we need to seek out and try and sit down with, at the table, and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't able to. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry I was afraid to hear you, but I'm listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we were speaking to before, we have to start with saying, and being admitting to, the truth, that we're not happy, that we are sad, that we are whatever we are. Giving it a title, maybe not the label, right? We're just, because we're sad doesn't mean we are depressed. Like we might be depressed for a time, but that's not, you're like a name for you. You don't have to be that all your life, but we do have to admit that we aren't satisfied, happy, whatever it is, that we haven't made it into what we thought we were heading toward. And that is literally the only way we can change. That is literally the only way, is if we can admit it to ourselves. Maybe not to everybody in the room, maybe not, to everybody in your life, but admitting it out loud, like you said, is where the freedom comes in, because then you're allowed to make change. And you are the only one from this point, this moment right now, creating that future version of you. Nobody else is doing that for you. There's no magic wand. There's no pill. There's no magic potion that is just gonna, you're just not just gonna win the lottery. You are creating it now. Yeah. And if you truly believe your value and your worthiness is that of winning the lottery, then you'll win the lottery and you'll actually keep the money. It won't just fly out the window with one fearful decision, right? Because fear runs, for the majority, fear runs our lives.
Yeah.
And so by being really, truly honest, then we have to look at everything that has caused us fear, ideas of lack, scarcity, to be able to shift our perspective. But it has to happen on that internal landscape first. It will never happen from trying to deprogram from an external, reading enough books, doing enough courses, throwing your money at things. Like, it just will not happen with this kind of approach, because you shift that energy internally, then the external will reflect that. That is the only way. And it's not easy. It really is not easy. I've had many clients just over the last week or two, really feeling their emotions, really, really getting to that. And Kelsey, you being one of them, just like that permission.
Yeah.
When you give yourself the permission, like for a lot of people, they can't even access that deep of emotion, that deep of a layer. But when you grant that permission for it to be felt, it truly creates incredible things. You're truly releasing it from, and, essentially alchemizing. If our goal is to have the higher self, be playing through our physical body, right? For us to be the higher self and have its seat, we can't be carrying the density that we've been carrying all our life. So that breathing spirit into those areas of the body, we do have to address everything. We have to address it all, because it's not just feeling the pain and then void. Yeah. It's breathing, it's bringing that spirit in, and it's a body, mind, spirit connection, right? And we often get very caught up in the spirit and the mind, essentially resetting mind tools, like all of these things that we can do. They're great. I'm not saying it's worthless. It's a great tool, like all of these things that we can do, right? But I 100% know that the reason that my life, Robin's life, our family is living the way we are, like pretty much stress-free given what we've been through. I know it's because I allowed myself to feel it all. And I know it's because Robin has allowed himself to go to those depths as well. There's, of course, like I said, meditations, affirmation. There's all of these tools out there. But are you truly listening? Are you truly listening to what your truth is? Or is it a distraction from the external to feel good?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's
because it can be positive. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. They're not
thing to discern that.
Well, and it's the difference between here and here, right? It's the difference between, I think, and we've all done it. I early on in my journey absolutely did it. We buy all the books and we do all the classes and we do the meditations, and it's, if we wear these particular crystals and we have all these, this it's that's the masculine. It's the mind driven. It's the, if I check all the boxes, I'll be good, and it's, the time for that is gone. We, as you said, we are truly mind, body, and spirit. And, spirit is calling big time, and how does it call to us? Through the body. And, what do we hold in the body? Our emotions. And you can't check box the emotions into subserviency. You can't, okay, if I meditate every 3 hours and I drink my green tea and I do my yoga and I have a cleanse every, okay, fine. But where do your emotions fit into that? If you're sitting there,
because those are all really positive things when compared to,
if you're allowing yourself to feel, they are amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing tools, but if it's all you're doing, if you're sitting there and meditating, whether you're seeing or hearing anything, or it's just, blackness, and it is different for everybody, but if there's no emotion about it, if there's no intent behind it other than I'm broken, I need to fix, you will stay broken.
Yeah. Or
worse, you will trick yourself into thinking you are fixed. I mean, how many times have we heard, well, I'm, X% healed, or, I'm on, I've made this much progress on my healing journey. No one can tell. No one can tell you where you are. And to be perfectly blunt, you never know where you are.
Yeah.
Other than, yeah. We talked about this this morning, you and I, where you were yesterday.
Yeah.
You know where you were this morning, and you know where you are right now.
Yeah.
Do you know where you're going to be 10 minutes from now? When your journey ends, where it will turn left, where it will turn right? Of course we don't. That's the point.
Yeah.
So it's absurd to think it's all right. I did the things, and, I talked to the people, and I should be good, right? Where's my certificate? Where's my I'm healed plaque? I mean, that's the mind. You know,
Yes.
and we have to try and reorient and reevaluate how we approach everything.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even something as simple as eating, you know, I'm finally in a position that I know when it's an emotional thing for me now, which sounds absurd, but my whole life I didn't. I could not distinguish between true physical pangs of hunger and the need for an emotional response. I can now. And it's weird to me because it's new. But if I hadn't gone there and accepted those emotions and validated those emotions and said, yeah, I have these emotions and this is what happens when I do, I'd never be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
You know, and we're our own worst blind spots, right? You know, we are very good at hiding and camouflaging for ourselves, you know, never mind the external, you know, because it's hard. Feeling is hard.
Absolutely. I always say it's one thing to awaken, if that's the word that you choose to use, and it's a whole other to continue evolving, because it's and like, you know, just from experience, like the layers and the depth that you go, it gets harder and harder and harder to actually continue to be really honest. You can totally just flatline. You can totally say that's enough and then hop back onto the ego train. It's so easy to do. It's and no judgment for anybody that, you know, it's a lot of people are happy running the rat race. A lot of people are happy continuing on the hamster wheel. And I honestly don't judge any of that, because I probably did that for lifetimes. I just chose this lifetime to get off. And I know what that created because of what I've witnessed in myself, in my husband, in our life, in our clients. I know what it's done for people when they choose themselves. Not choosing because of ideas, not choosing because, oh, maybe this will make me money. Oh, maybe this, you know, maybe I'll find my soul. Like, I just, you know, you can't go through your life with ideas.
Yeah.
The point is actually to understand what ideas and beliefs are causing your filter to clog and keeping you from the truth of who you are. And I mean, it's essentially that like ripping apart everything that doesn't compute, everything that doesn't align, everything that, you know, was your mom's belief, was your teacher's indoctrination, was all of these things and structures, you know. And I constantly ask myself, you know, is this Robin's truth? Is this my truth?
Yeah.
It gets muddy. We muddy the waters a lot. Especially when you're close with people, right? And we want to make sure that we're always constantly discerning that, you know, Robin, you know, just in our circumstance, Robin's got his and I've got mine. And, you know, do we agree a lot of the time? Yes, but we don't always. And it's respected, you know? And when you are calling yourself out for all of the stuff that we've discussed throughout this broadcast, you trust yourself. So then you trust yourself in these relationships. And when they're calling themselves out, you know, there's your trust foundation. Yeah. I trust Robin because he trusts himself, not because I think he's better, not because I have to compete, not because, you know, he was right last time, so I should be right this time. I just trust because I know what he's holding himself accountable for. You know, and he knows the same for me. And so if we don't agree in certain moments, then we decide to talk about it maturely, right? Because we're mature adults. We're not still, you know, adults living a childlike mentality or maturity. We're saying I'm accountable for all of it, which means we can come to the table and have a discussion. Yeah. And we're not pulling from our traumas and our wounds and everything else that used to kind of pull us off of our you know, essentially our road, like our our alignment.
Yeah.
You know? So it's really, really important because I know Robin and I were meant to be, and I know, there's certain factors that brought us together, but we continually held ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, we triggered each other's growth. It wasn't butterflies and rainbows. It was, honestly, the hardest stuff, going through these things, calling ourselves out with that mirror. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying, being in a relationship versus single is, that they each have their pros and cons, obviously. Being single, you don't have that mirror reflection all the time, but you have you as your reflection all the time. So, and then add kids into the mix. How do we as mothers go from that, idea of servitude? And, we've talked about this before, Kelsey, like, as mothers, babies come in and they need certain things, and we don't live in a society where we're nurtured through that, right? Where we're supported to just play our role as the divine feminine through them growing up. There's all these pressures to make sure you get back, physically where you were before the kids came. How are you going to support the family now that you've got kids? Both of you need to work, like whatever, bring an income in. There's all these pressures that, fall upon mothers and parents together. But are we doing it to ourselves? Are we falling into the beliefs of others? Are we falling into everybody else's perception of what success is? Or are we allowing ourselves to have our own truth? Let everybody else continue on the hamster wheel. You don't have to choose that. And I say this all the time, you don't need a job, you need an income.
Yeah.
You don't need a certain career. You have to understand what skills you have and how you can adapt them in each and every moment, especially if you're not happy where you're at.
Yeah.
But you have to decide. You have to decide if it's worth it, what you're still to gain, what you're still to learn through these experiences. And I just always say, leave it with gratitude, because regardless, you evolved in every single situation and experience.
No, absolutely. And you're so right to bring up that maturity piece, right? You and Robin definitely are mature, actual adults, but so many are not. And it's regardless of whether you have a family, want a family, if it's in the plans or not, we have to start parenting ourselves, because we weren't parented. We were all, here's your mold, you need to fit into this mold. If you don't fit into this mold, there's severe repercussions. We're going to emotionally and spiritually beat you down until you conform.
Mm-hmm.
That's not parenting, and we really have to start being the parent figure. I really dislike that word. It brings up this connotation of ownership, and I don't have a better word, but I don't.
Guide. I don't know. I sometimes use guide, but
Guide. I like guide.
You know
I like
what you
guide.
mean.
Yeah. We have to start being what we needed for ourselves.
Yeah.
Regardless of who else is in our life presently or who may come into our life. Like I said, kids or no kids, relationship or no relationship. At our core, we're all still little kids, and we're little kids that didn't get what we needed, whether we knew what we needed or not.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to find out. And we have to be able to give that to ourselves, especially if we are in a position that we have or will have families of our own, because that's the big secret. Everyone talks about ancestral trauma and generational trauma, and nobody understands how it's perpetuated. It's just, I see it. That's the reason. That's the reason I'm messed up. You know, we got to stop this ancestral generational trauma. Well, it stops when you go back to you, when you disconnect from everything that you were taught and you say, I'm going to start over. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, I'm going to start over. And in every moment, I'm going to be to myself who I needed. You know, one of the biggest turnarounds for my daughter, you know, and I shared this with you and Robin, you know, during some of her really severe emotional outbursts, you know, she's just turned 3, you know, is I see you. I love you and I see you and it's okay.
Yeah.
She stopped.
Yeah.
And she smiled. And she hugged me. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, getting a little emotional.
Oh, it's a huge moment.
We didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, you and I, and so many of it, we did not have that. We had parents that were emotionally stunted and unavailable because of their own trauma, because of that generational passed down nonsense, who couldn't, not even were ill-equipped. We're not capable. You know, whether you had good experiences or bad experiences with your parents, at the core, they weren't capable because they didn't have their own emotions available to them. You know, I would have given anything in so many instances for my parents to have said something along those lines instead of banishing me to my room or whatever it was. You know, that's the big secret, people. That's the way that it ends. And you start to pivot and you start to change for yourself. It starts here. You know, I have met a lot of beautiful families and beautiful moms that are very aware of the traumas that they carry and have sustained, and this kind of cyclical cycle that you know, keeps getting perpetuated. But and like myself, when I first started, it was, well, I don't want to screw up my kids. I know this has to stop because I don't want to screw up my kids. But you have to unscrew up yourself first. You know, I mean, what do they say on the planes? Put the mask on yourself first, then the kids, right? Hate that analogy, but it's the best one I've got at the moment. You know, it's, you have to help yourself first. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no hope. Otherwise, it's just back and forth. Your emotional needs not being met, being, you know, cast out and reflected on your kid, and then reflected right back to you. Yeah. And that's the cycle.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. No, and that cycle can it's just never ending, you know. And then what are you creating in your kids, and then your kids creating in their kids, and here we go, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it is just, it's so true. It's just owning that in the moment, because once you squeeze the toothpaste out of that tooth, you know, out of the little thing, you can't squish it back in. You have to own that. You have to own everything you do. Yeah. You know, I'm done with blaming others. I'm done with it. You know, I could say maybe a couple of years ago, I was done with most of that, you know, and there were still certain instances. I can't do that anymore because I'm creating all of it. I've created everything that I've ever been and done. I'm creating in this moment. And so everything positive or negative is created by me. Yeah. And I have to take ownership over that. And otherwise everybody else has a say. Everybody else has a perspective. Everybody else has, you know, their finger in the pot, you know, and we're here for a sovereign journey, right? Is what we set out to do, whether we remembered it or not when we first embarked on it. But it's really hard sometimes to admit that we chose those family members, or we chose that abuse, or that we chose for that to happen. But we have to understand the role that we played. You know, were we looking for love in the wrong places? Were we looking for acceptance and understanding from people that couldn't even understand and accept themselves.
Yeah.
And why were we continually doing that? Well, we needed all those doors to shut so that we could be our savior.
Yeah.
Right? We truly needed all of those doors to shut so that it would reflect back to us. We chose that family, essentially, all of those family members, so that we found ourselves. Right? Through all of that trauma, we get to have ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we needed those reflections to understand who we were.
Yeah.
Right? Just as we need certain pleasures, we need to experience certain pleasure and good in order to understand what we fear.
Yeah.
So we need both to come to that greater understanding of who we are. But, essentially it's not really easy to go through some of those negative experiences, right? They hold a lot of density, those emotions. And that is for a reason, right? They're supposed to strike a chord. They're supposed to, we're supposed to have that memory. So that we could literally pull on that thread and understand ourselves at that level and why we would have called that in. What did we actually come to heal? And then, that pulls to even a further remembrance, that pulls to a past lifetime, that pulls to, right? Oh, that's the role she played. Oh, and we had this relationship in a past. Those things don't define you, but they do add up, all these experiences, to who you are right now in this moment and how you're going to carry forward. And you get to decide right here, right now, if you're going to be happy 5 years from now or 2 years from now, happy and in peace, or still living in fear and creating more of it. And you get to decide right now how you approach it. Yeah. So that's scary for some, but that's freedom, that's freedom for me. That means that I'm not waiting for some magical thing or for me to get to a certain level, or for me, I get to decide right now.
Yeah.
And that's exciting because that means I have full control. That means that this limitless potential that we essentially have, we don't know the beginning and the end of the universe. It's limitless, that we literally can create anything we want. We are humans, so sometimes we want things to kind of materialize faster, and because they don't materialize at that speed that we have an idea of, we'll get caught in the see it doesn't happen, right? But how much do you want it? Right? Because the universe will continue to test you with how much you want things, right? Because it's not going to happen. We did years and years and years of abuse.
Yeah.
Right? How quickly are those dreams going to manifest? We've got to give it time. And yeah, essentially we will be tested along the way of how much do you want it? You'll get tested along that spiral, and you come back to those points and those traumas and you get to rediscover, along the way, these versions of self going through that same thing again. Oh, it doesn't hurt as much this time. Oh, I handled that way better than my 5 year ago version did. She would have been losing her mind, and I'm okay. Right.
And I think it's important to point out too, that there's nothing outside of you testing you. There's this ideology that, the universe is either for or against me, or, if I play by the rules, then everything I ever hoped and dreamed of will manifest. Thank you, the secret.
It's still that separate.
Yeah, it's not. You're testing yourself. Your higher self wants to know that you're really ready for all of the amazing things that you couldn't even begin to conceive of, that are out there, that are yours already.
Yeah.
But they aren't going to come to you if you can't handle it.
Exactly.
That's one of the most beautiful things about the spiritual journey, right? You're never going to take on more than you can handle, and you're never going to be given more than you can handle, because you're directing the journey.
Yeah.
And that's going to look different for everybody else, whether it's a blind spot you can't get past because the emotional work hasn't been done. You won't be able to go there. Whether it's, yeah, I can go there and I'm going to have these 6 back-to-back admissions and be in bed for a week and a half. And then the miracles start happening. You know, it
Yeah.
all is 100,000% dependent on what your true self wants and is willing, you know, are you willing to go the distance? And it's not some predetermined, it's not some, you know,
Yeah.
someone sitting up in the sky asking that. It's yourself.
Yeah.
You know, there's no other measure, no merit to be obtained other than from yourself.
Yeah.
That's what sovereignty is. It's completely and wholeheartedly owning and directing your journey. If you're still sitting in blame, if you're still sitting in pointing fingers at the external, you've essentially said, here's my power. I have no control.
Mm-hmm.
Everything and everyone in my existence controls me.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's up to me. Why would you choose that?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all done it. You know, we've spent
Yeah.
lifetimes doing it. You know, it's not I don't say this from a point of judgment, but you do have a choice now. And
Yeah.
the choice has never been easier than it is right here, right now, because of everything energetically going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly it. Do you really truly embody that you are the universe, that you are God creator? Like I am, right? Because when you've dealt with all of those levels of lack and fear and insecurity and all of these lower, you know, the dense
Mm-hmm.
emotions stored inside the feminine, um, there's just more and more trust of self. There's more and more I am available to you, right? And we essentially live that, and you know, there's no separation. It's nothing external outside of you on either end. You either blame, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
coming to you from an external, or you're sending it out, you know, toward an external. But you know, you truly do get to control it if you understand that that everything is energy, and you are controlling it, and you are manifesting it. It's hilarious because our kids play dolls and Barbies constantly, but it's always like house, like it's our
Yeah.
family playing out, you know, these versions of us. And um it's so cute because they're literally manifesting what they want in their reality in the future. They don't kind of get into like fantastical, like, you know, they
And
could, right? They've been exposed to it, but it's always so like real life, you know.
yeah.
You know, with this house we'll change the flooring, and then we'll, you know, they're creating like couches out of like old styrofoam pieces, like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
always like this little world, right? And we forget how to create. We forget that our imagination is that powerful. We forget how to play. We forget how to not, you know, I don't think Bryn thinks about the time 1 hour in a day, like what time it is. She just
Yeah.
gets called for food every once in a while, and, you know,
Yeah.
asks for a snack. But I literally, like, you know, the sun starts to go down. She's like, I would like a bath. And you know, she's literally in her own world all day. So Lay's a lot more aware just to her age and everything, and being, you know, a little bit more influenced by the adults. But um, we forget what that's like. We forget what that is, that moment to moment true presence for whatever there is in that moment, you know? Um, and yeah, we know that time's a construct, but we get pulled in, us as humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Woo, there's so many things that can pull us out of our moments, you know?
Yeah, like just tonight, you know, with our our computer,
With our
we
internet.
we could have freaked out, we could have been stressed out, and it was, well, no, it'll, when it works, we'll be on. You know,
Yeah.
and it seems like something so small, but the small moments add up. And when you think about how much stress and anxiety and fear and angst, and the wheels are turning and turning over simple things, you
Yeah.
know, and then throw on the really, you know, complex, the super big scary things, you know, and we are privileged to be able to watch children, because that does not enter into their reality unless they learn it from us, you know?
Well, and our traumas, Kels, like because of our traumas and the way that we've kind of victimized ourselves, it's so easy to fall into that, like
Yeah.
with anything, like anything that could be a blessing. We can fall into, well, it adds this to my plate so easily.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things that Robin and I started to do was to like it's gratitude, period. Like
Yeah.
we have so many toys to organize because we have 3 beautiful children, right?
Yeah.
We have to buy 2 big bags of dog food every time because we have 4 beautiful dogs.
Yeah.
There's that much love to go around in our little family. You know what I mean? But we can get pulled into, well, this adds this and this and this, and it takes me out of my moment that much more, and I don't get to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right? Who's stopping you from that? Who really has that kind of power over you?
Well, and I think I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think for those of us that are parents, it's one of the biggest points of guilt and resentment, right? You know, it's, I wanted these kids, I love these kids, but you know, I want to take a bath. I really need to take a nap. I wanted to read a book. I've had these, you know, thoughts, and it's, what do? You blame and resent your children, right? But at the end of the day, I'm the one that's saying, Kelsey is not important enough to say, hey kids, you're going to watch a 30-minute cartoon. I'm going to read my book because I need just 30 minutes. Or, you know what? Dad's home, dinner's done. I'm checking out. I'm going to go have a bath, and I'm going to sit by myself in that glorious silence for an hour. You know, it's me stopping myself.
Yeah.
It's the adults. We are telling ourselves we're not worthy. Why? Because we don't like or love ourselves. It's all comes back to that one point, you know, and it's why we harp on it. It's why we talk about it ad nauseum, because it is literally the point. We are, as I love that you say this, we are the point.
Yeah.
And if we can't find the love and the like for ourselves, nothing else we do is going to make a damn bit of difference. No retreats, no courses. You can become a master yoga instructor. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
If you can't find a way to start to like and love yourself.
No, you have to be worth it.
Yeah.
I'm the first one to admit how competitive I was. I'm the better parent, right? Because Robin could take time for himself.
Yeah.
And it triggered me so badly when he could take an hour with 3 little minions running around, you know, and what that did to me.
Yeah.
Right? But like then I realized it's me not allowing myself to take time. It's not that Robin's not allowing me, right? He's just saying at this moment, this is what I need. And I'm not able to do that at any moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so who's creating that? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we have these ideas of what having kids means, or what having a position in a huge company means, that we have all of these things, all of these expectations that come before us, that come before our health, that come before our anything, right? But as we've said, if you don't fill your own cup, you're not doing anybody good, because you're not showing up 100%.
Yeah.
Right? You're not grounded. So how good are you to whatever you're showing up to do if you're not giving to yourself? And that looks different for everybody. Obviously, sometimes people need to get busier than they are. You know, some people, like, it depends on the situation, but no, I definitely admit 100% how competitive I was. But you're only competitive with anybody when your unworthiness gets kind of triggered, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody else is supposed to give that to you. Robin wasn't supposed to create it for me. He wasn't supposed to say, now go take a nap. You know what I mean? Like, he did offer, of course, because he's a good person, but whether it was a good time or not, or whether I could allow myself to.
Well, then in that, right, you unconsciously had given your power away. You were looking for him to control the situation and grant permission.
Yeah.
And we all do it in different ways, and we don't even see it. And that's, it's one of the major key points, is that every day, in lots of little ways, we all, even those of us who've been on the journey for a while, we can in moments continue to give our control of ourselves over to somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's important to be able to recognize that first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because it does happen very easily. Why would it be in his, and we know he's not like this, but why would it be in his realm to grant you permission, dear peasant, to go take a nap? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No, you're a queen in your own right. Go take the damn nap. But we stop ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And why do we stop ourselves? Like you have to start to get really honest with yourself. That's where it starts. So that you can understand why you do certain behaviors and patterns, and you can catch yourself in those moments, right? Why are you addicted to suffrage? Why are you shaming yourself? Why? To get to the, bottom of it, because nobody's going to change it for you. Absolutely nobody can. And that's where I just, Robin was my biggest mentor, because he constantly reflected that for me. Like he took self responsibility, and he was on that journey and that path, but we constantly reflected each other, and it's not easy to hold space for that person going through those kinds of healings when, like, you're reflecting it for them.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So, I hear often, oh, well, it's good that you lucked out and had Robin and you guys seem to figure it out or whatever. He understands you. And it's like, whew, I just can't breathe, because
11 years later, sort of, right?
Right. Like there's so much efforting, even though our level of love, it's definitely, it's taken on greater depths even in the last year or two, just because of the level of healing we've done. But that's scary in itself, right? To be that honest with yourself and go, how much am I going to change through this? Am I going to still be the same person? And am I going to really hold that person in the same regard, in the same way? Like, I don't know if I go to this truth to this extent, if we're going to find that still.
Yeah.
And what we found is that there's a deeper love and there's a deeper recognition, but it's not always that's why it's not tangible, because you don't know. You have to trust yourself that much. You have to be that honest with yourself. Because there are many things that we've worked through that definitely trigger each other, and it's been a journey. It's been a long journey. But there's so much more to come, and I know that we're over, like, that really hard stuff. We get to live life because we're deciding to. We're creating every single day, like I said, we get to hold a lot because we're able to hold a lot. So instead of it being a burden, we get to homeschool our kids. We get to walk the dogs 3 times a day. We get to go to the farmer's market and make food from home and food from scratch, which takes a lot more time, but we get to do that, right? We get to it's just endless. We get to. These aren't burdens just because we've changed the perception of what that is, because of the internal work that we've shifted within ourselves. That internal landscape is everything. You have to look at what you defined as safety and security. You have to look at what you identified with. from that ego version of you and understand exactly why so that you can put it to rest.
Yeah.
And then you rebirth yourself because you have to start from ground zero and have an existential crisis and then understand that you're building yourself up from nothing, because that's essentially where you go to because you have no ground.
Yeah.
Right. And as we know, Kels, like we were talking about, everybody's roots are being shaken right now because these ideas of safety and security are no longer, and we can't continue to move forward with this, the earth. Like I said in our last call, we can't, it's unavoidable. We know that consciousness is rising on the earth.
Yeah.
Right. It's happening, and it's triggering everyone to decide who they are and what they're going to stand for right now for themselves, and you can choose to disregard, but just know that that's what you're choosing.
Yeah.
Own it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been absolutely amazing and
We
wonderful.
could talk for hours. We know
We
that.
could. And I'd love to, but no, but we're going to do this again, I feel. And no, these are important things. We both really feel this close to our being and close to our heart to talk about these things. We're both actively going through it. It never stops. And, it's helpful to share and to voice and to call attention to.
Yes.
Absolutely. Check out the show notes, folks. I've got links to how you can get in touch with Leah and how you can get in touch with me and watch both our spaces. There's some interesting, cool stuff that's going to be coming.
And thank you so much for being here. And
yes,
just honor all of you for your paths and what you're walking. I don't know who is watching during the live, but I will check it out after.
Yes, we got with some amazing people that were checking us out. So much appreciated. Much love to everyone, and we'll leave you there to next time. And thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kelsey.
Take care.